Welcome in, everyone, ready for another deep dive. This one is, it's a wild ride.
Yeah, you could say that.
The Heidi Fergus case.
Definitely a case with a lot of twists and turns.
And a lot of questions. We're working with a single source on this one,
That's right, just one.
a 48 hours podcast episode.
It's amazing how much they pack into just one episode.
Right. They lay out this suspicious death, all these conflicting accounts of what went down.
Lots of different sides to the story.
Exactly. So we're going to break it all down for you, like always.
Analyze all the evidence.
Figure out what makes sense and what doesn't. You with me.
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
Okay, so we're going back to April 25th, 2010. Two 911 calls come in. The first from Heidi. She's frantic, says someone's breaking in.
Scary stuff.
Then, just minutes later, Nick calls, says shots have been fired.
So it sounds like a pretty clear-cut case of a home invasion gone wrong.
You would think, right? But when the paramedics arrive, things don't quite match up.
Ah, so that's where things start to get interesting.
Right, and that's what makes this case so intriguing. Like, how reliable is Nick's account?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
Heidi's found shot in the back, like she was trying to escape towards the kitchen. Nick has a gunshot wound to his leg.
Okay, but that could still be consistent with his struggle with an intruder, right?
It could be,
Yeah,
but there are these little details like breadcrumbs that just don't add up.
I see what you mean. Like what?
Well, Nick says he heard someone at the door, so he grabs his shotgun, loads it, and then, get this, he has Heidi go downstairs first.
Wait, toward the potential danger.
Yep. Does that make sense to you?
If I had a shotgun and thought there was an intruder, I wouldn't send my wife down the stairs first. It just doesn't seem logical.
Exactly. And then there's the neighbor, Brandon.
Okay, what about him?
He was house sitting next door. He says he heard an argument, but he never saw anyone leaving the house.
So no sign of an intruder fleeing the scene.
Nope. And to add another layer, the responding officer, Sergeant Gray, specifically said he didn't see anyone running away either.
So already we're seeing these little cracks in Nick's story.
Right. Things aren't adding up.
It makes you wonder, was that chaos Nick described a real struggle, or was it something else entirely?
Exactly, like a carefully constructed scene.
A cover-up.
Maybe. So let's fast forward a bit. Nick's at the police station being interviewed by Sergeant Gray, and this is where things get even more complicated.
Oh, how so?
Nick's story starts to shift. Inconsistent details start popping up.
Little inconsistencies can often be the most telling, you know?
Totally. For example, Nick first says Heidi was in the kitchen when she was shot, but later he changes his story. Says she was running away.
Interesting.
Yeah. So why change the details? Is he trying to manipulate the narrative?
It certainly makes you wonder.
Right. And then there's the whole thing about the eviction.
Eviction? What eviction?
Turns out they were behind on their mortgage payments.
Oh, wow.
And they were set to be evicted the very next day.
No way.
But here's the kicker. Investigators didn't find any signs that they were packing. No boxes, no moving trucks scheduled, nothing.
So it doesn't look like they were preparing to move at all.
Not at all. And this is where we start to see a whole other side of Nick.
What do you mean?
He's got all these financial secrets, like he was actively hiding this from Heidi.
Wow. So not only was there a possible crime, but their whole relationship might have been built on a lie.
It really paints a different picture, doesn't it?
Totally. And that's just the beginning.
We haven't even gotten to the identity theft story yet.
Oh, boy. This is getting good.
It's crazy, right? To think about Nick going to such lengths making up this whole identity theft story.
Absolutely. And you know what's even more unsettling? This pattern of deception. It didn't end with Heidi.
You mean with his second wife, Rachel?
Exactly. Years later, with Rachel, a disturbingly similar pattern starts to emerge.
So even after everything that happened with Heidi, Nick continued down this path of secrets and lies.
It seems that way. Those same financial issues, they crop up again in his second marriage. Hidden debts, undisclosed struggles, just like before. It's like a repeat performance almost. A huge red flag, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. I mean, it suggests this wasn't just a one-time thing, right? It was like a deeply ingrained habit for him,
Yeah.
this way of operating that followed him.
Precisely. And when you connect that back to Heidi's case, it casts a pretty dark shadow over Nick's credibility, doesn't it? Makes you question everything he's said and done.
For sure. So after the interview, Nick basically shuts down, refuses to answer any more questions. The case goes cold for a while. Years pass. Nothing much happens. Then in 2019, Detective Nicole Sipes takes over. What made her reopen this cold case?
Well, Detective Sipes, she's got this reputation, known for being incredibly thorough, Meticulous, you could say. And I guess she just wasn't satisfied with how things were left, decided to take a fresh look at everything. The financial timeline in particular is what led to a major breakthrough.
What did she find?
Basically, there was zero evidence that Heidi knew about the extent of their financial problems. No emails, no texts, no conversations with friends or family, anything like that. Nothing to suggest she knew about the foreclosure, the eviction, any of it.
But hold on, didn't Nick say they were both aware of the situation? Like they were trying to work through it together?
That's what he claimed, yeah. But Sipes's investigation showed a completely different reality. It was like Nick had intentionally kept Heidi in the dark, built this whole fantasy world where their finances were fine.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it, to think she was living a lie? That her own husband was orchestrating this whole thing.
A betrayal of the worst kind. And for the investigators, it was a huge turning point. Suddenly, the focus shifted away from this random break-in and towards something much more calculated, more sinister. It introduced the very real possibility of a motive.
So are you saying they started to consider that Nick might have killed Heidi to keep her from finding out about the money problems and their whole precarious situation?
Exactly. You've got to remember, Nick was very concerned about his image. He was the responsible one, the provider, the guy who fixed things. And if all this financial mismanagement came out, it would have shattered that image.
It's amazing how one detail, like Heidi not knowing about the finances, can change the entire course of an investigation. It's like finding the missing piece of the puzzle.
It really shows the importance of thorough investigation, doesn't it? But wait, there's more. Sipes dug up another crucial piece of evidence, and this one came from a very unexpected source. Nick's second wife, Rachel.
Okay, wait. Why would Rachel have anything to do with this? This happened years before she even knew Nick.
Remember that pattern of deception we talked about? Well, it seems Nick's marriage to Rachel wasn't exactly a fairy tale either. Those financial secrets and lies, they popped up again. And Rachel, well, she started to have her doubts about Nick's honesty.
So history was repeating itself. Nick was stuck in this cycle of lies.
Tragic, really. And it led Rachel down a path of questioning everything about Nick, including his whole story about Heidi's death. She began to suspect he was capable of much more than he let on.
What did she do with those suspicions? Did she confront him?
She did, but she was smart about it. Rachel secretly recorded a conversation they had, hoping to catch him in a lie. Pretty risky move, but she felt she had to uncover the truth.
Wow, this is like something out of a movie. So what happened? Did he confess to anything?
Well, the recording is, it's chilling. Rachel flat out accuses him of lying, and Nick, he just keeps dodging the question. It's unsettling. And at one point, he actually admits to being capable of murder.
He said that. He actually said those words.
He did, and that admission, caught on tape, was a bombshell for the investigation. Rachel, understandably freaked out by what she'd found, handed the recording over to Sipes.
So now they have a possible motive, a clear pattern of deception over 2 marriages, and basically a confession recorded on tape. Sounds like the case against Nick was finally coming together.
Absolutely. And for Heidi's family and friends, who had been waiting all these years for answers, it was a sign that maybe finally justice would be served.
It's amazing, you know, after all this time, Rachel's recording comes to light. You'd think that would be it, right? Case closed.
You would think so, yeah. But the legal system, well, it's rarely that simple. In a totally unexpected twist, the judge decides that Rachel's testimony in that recording, they're not allowed in court.
Wait, seriously, why would they throw out something so important?
The judge's reasoning was basically that Rachel's testimony and the recording, they focused on stuff that happened way after Heidi died. So it wasn't directly related to what happened that morning. The prosecution had to build their case without that big revelation.
So without that crucial piece, how did they approach the trial? What was their strategy?
They shifted their focus to Nick's story, all the inconsistencies in it, and the fact that there was zero physical evidence to support the intruder story. They even went so far as to use an FBI model of the Fergus home.
Oh, wow, really? Like a miniature replica?
Exactly. To show the jury how unlikely Nick's version of the struggle was. How the physical space just didn't line up with his account. What about the defense? What was their approach?
Well, the defense, they stuck to their guns. Maintained Nick's innocence the whole time. Argued that just because there wasn't evidence of an intruder didn't mean one didn't exist.
Right. The classic absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence argument.
Exactly. And they brought up the neighbor's testimony again, the one who said they heard a voice, claimed it supported Nick's story of a struggle.
But didn't we hear that the neighbor might have just misheard Nick's 911 calls? Seems like a pretty weak foundation for a defense.
Yeah, it did seem kind of flimsy.
Yeah.
But their point was that there were other ways to interpret what happened. They also tried to paint a picture of Heidi as being in the know about the money problems to undermine the motive the prosecution was building.
So it basically became a battle of narratives.
Right. Totally. The prosecution saying it was all about deceit and control. The defense clinging to the possibility of this mystery intruder and reasonable doubt. So what did the jury think?
Well, after a long trial, a lot of emotional testimony, they deliberated for just 5 hours.
5 hours? That's pretty quick for such a complex case.
It is, yeah. And in the end, they delivered a guilty verdict. Nick was convicted on 2 counts of murder, premeditated and intentional.
So they saw through his story. They believed the prosecution.
They did. And for Heidi's family and friends, it was a long time coming. After 11 years of living with Nick's lies, they finally had the truth. It was a sense of closure and justice. What about Nick, though?
Yeah.
Did he ever admit to what he did? Show any remorse?
You'd think after all that he might finally crack.
Nope. He maintains his innocence to this day. At his sentencing, he gave a whole speech, claiming he was innocent, saying his body might be imprisoned, but his soul was free. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
It really makes you wonder what goes on in someone's mind to hold on to a lie so tightly, even when all the evidence points the other way.
It's a reminder that truth can be a slippery thing. And sometimes, the stories we tell ourselves are more powerful than any facts. Well, this deep dive has certainly been a roller coaster. We started with just one podcast episode and ended up uncovering a world of secrets.
Absolutely. It's crazy how seemingly ordinary lives can hide such darkness underneath. And I think it shows just how important it is to be critical, to question what we see and hear.
Couldn't agree more. We might never know for sure what happened that morning, but by examining the evidence, looking at all the different perspectives, we get a little closer to understanding the truth. And maybe, just as importantly, we gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and the complexities of human nature.
Well said. And for anyone listening who wants to go even deeper, we encourage you to check out the 48 Hours website. They have a ton of information on the case, evidence, photos, all sorts of stuff, always more to explore.
That's the beauty of a good mystery, isn't it? It keeps you thinking, questioning.
Exactly. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.